So welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today we are joined by Tali, who is the CEO of Dono. So welcome, Tali. Why don't you start by telling us just a little bit about yourself and what you guys do at Dono?
Hey, Jordan. So, first of all, thank you for having me and inviting me to this podcast and appreciate that. So, I'm Tali, one of the three co-founders and the CEO of Dono. Learned law, moved to financial industry, investment banking, private equity, and around like 2 years ago, decided to build a startup. We had a long journey. Started with a home equity product for seniors. There, we wanted to know how to originate a financial product that liquidates home equity in less than 20 minutes. And a very small item that we needed is to verify ownership on the properties that we're going to liquidate. We were quite sure that we'll find an API, pay a few cents per call, and get this like instant verification. And then we figure out that actually verifying ownership on properties in the States, it's a process that will take you from days to weeks and cost you like a few hundreds of dollars. And we were quite shocked by the situation. Started to solving it ourselves, understanding how big is the problem, how hugely in some way it affects like the financial ecosystem because we're talking about like the biggest asset class in the world, and decided to build this missing infrastructure really to create kind of like the a registration system for properties in the United States that today is in some ways missing. So yeah, that's us.
Okay. Amazing. So I love that. Always the best businesses are born. No worries. All of the best businesses I find are born out of we wish there was a better way and there wasn't, so we made it. You know.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I see you guys use AI heavily in your product. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that and then like the process and what it simplifies?
Yeah, we're using AI in really everything. We are handling super complex, like I will claim we are coming to organize like the biggest data place on earth that doesn't it's not organized today. Like we are taking images from like counties. Okay, let's go a bit back. Like there's like more than like 3,000. Every county today is storing the records that you need to verify ownership as images. They're not indexing it. And there's like no formatted way to save those images. There's like no unified format for those records in some way. And we need to know how to collect and process those public records. That's the records and we are collecting in a super scalable way and in a super accurate way. And you cannot do it without super strong AI and LLM models that will know how to handle this type of like messy, super messy data and very scalable.
Okay. And you say so the big problem you're solving is verifying ownership. Back when we had the crazy crypto bull run, a lot of people were talking about ownership and verification and everything is on the blockchain. Is there any blockchain underneath or going on here?
Not at all. In some way, what blockchain wanted to do is to replace the existing system.
Yeah.
I don't believe by replacing, revoking an existing system. My personal belief that like empowering a current system that works and serving in billions of dollars industries and people for hundreds of years is a better way. So they come in some way, the blockchain wave in some way came into real estate and ownership verification to in some way fight against. We're coming to empower them.
Hmm. I like that. That makes a lot more sense because it's a very painful, slow process to change something and reinvent it, and to improve it, it's a lot easier, right?
And
Okay.
also, once you understand the market, you understand that like we're coming and doing ownership verification, but there's like so many layers in the financial market that is relying. Like, you cannot take a mortgage without having this type of verification. We call it like title in the States. And you cannot take a mortgage because the secondary market players like for any kind of like huge mortgage investor is kind of like it's like mandatory to have it. So by trying to do something else, you in some way you don't really understand market dynamics. So you really need to understand where are you playing, who are you serving, what's their real needs in some way, and how you're building something that will actually support the entire ecosystem and not fight against it.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. And so Tali, like with Dono, who is the end user that you're reaching out to or is using the service here?
Okay. So we'll start a bit back and then answer directly your question. I will explain like a bit what we are doing today. In short, there is like no registration system for properties in the States. What do we have is local archives on a county level basis, more than 3,200 counties, that every county is just storing the records. You cannot get any answer to any question. They just have an archives with all of the records. And then every time that you have any query about real estate data, and the most common query is again ownership, somebody will need to they manually dig into those archives, collect all of like the relevant papers. Hopefully will find all of the relevant papers, probably will miss some, and then he will need to read each and every document, each and every record, each and every image to understand what's going on. And then kind of like drawing the lines between all of the dots to eventually build kind of like the understanding what's like the current status from like an ownership perspective of this property. And we are coming and doing this process in a fully automated way, much more accurate than current market standards, and also providing kind of like a much robust and strong tool to our client. If I'm now answering your question directly, so every business in some way that the question of like property ownership affects their way of doing a business is
Yeah.
a potential client for us. So we can talk about every player in the financial ecosystem, from
Mm,
banks to mortgage lenders to investors to developers to builders to lawyers and insurance companies and so on and so on.
okay.
But we do kind of like a strategic decision at the beginning of this journey to focus only on one industry, and that's the title industry. The title industry in the state, that's the industry that is responsible to verify ownership. If you're going to buy a property in the States, you're going to hire their services to do this manual investigation. And then they're also going to ensure your transaction from like ownership perspective. So we decided to focus on title industry. And the simple reason is that they are the hardest market. They have the highest bar from like an accuracy perspective. And we figure out if we will serve them successfully, then we will create this unofficial certificate that we are a reliable company that everybody can trust on the data that we're providing them. And then it will be easier for us to create kind of like this cross vertical company, create this kind of like market benchmark that we're coming to create.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. That's really smart. So instead of serving everybody to pick one niche and the niche just happens to be the hardest, most difficult to serve. So if you can do it for them, everyone's going to go, well, these guys do it for them. Like they can definitely do it for us. Is that right?
Exactly. Because they're kind of
Yeah.
like, think about it like the unofficial gatekeepers of public records and ownership verification and so on.
Okay. Nice. And how are you finding these clients? Are you outreaching to them? Are they coming to you? What does that look like?
That's the hardest part.
I see.
So title industry is a very, very traditional industry. They're like a very small community. Everybody in this industry knows each other. It's really hard to be an outsider from this in this industry because they're not
Mhm.
trusting you or you're not part of them. So what we figure out, and we built kind of like a group of industry veterans that they are supporting our sales effort, meaning that they're going to introduce us into like the right person in the right organization because they probably worked with each other somewhere in the past. And they're not only introducing us to this like guy or woman, but they're also helping us to facilitate the deal in some way. So really help us get into the right person and
Mhm.
also talk with them in the right language. Because although both of us speak English, we're
Mhm.
coming from like a techie startup mode, and they're coming from like a super traditional insurance, not changing anything mode. And there's like a challenge here in some way to bridge about like the language gap that exists. And those are the guys that like the group that's helping us to do that.
Okay. Nice. Oh, okay. Got it. So partners, sort of semi-affiliates that are helping you guys go in there, acquire, but also speak to the market in the language that they understand on your behalf.
Exactly.
Okay. And you mentioned that the company is just a couple of years old. Like, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in growing from zero to where you guys are now?
It's a great question. I think the biggest challenge from like a company perspective that we're still facing in some way
Mhm.
is really building trust. Building trust help us to close deal. Building trust help us to maintain relationship. Building trust meaning that we can expand our deals. And that's kind of like the most challenging part here because you want to build trust and you want to do it fast and scalable. And trust is something that is the opposite. Trust is built by long term and slow processes and so on. And we don't have the time to those like 10-year cycle and so on. So that's kind
Yeah.
of like, I think, the biggest challenge. We have others, of course, challenges. That's kind of like the number one.
Okay. And so then, if you could go back to the inception of Dono, are there any things that you would change now that you've sort of lived the last couple of years building the business and learned all these lessons?
Many. I think when we started, we thought the data is going to be easier from many perspectives. And as much as we are building our more robust solution and serving in other geographies, more states, and so on, and you understand how the data is becoming more and more complex. And we are adding more staff, like professional staff, professional that knows this type of data, the data to our team. I guess if we'll start from scratch, I will bring those people kind of like on board here earlier, uh, and maybe launch our product like a bit slower. But yeah,
Okay, interesting. So I haven't heard that before. Launch the product slower. I've asked this question to some founders, and they've said to me that they would launch quicker. Actually, so why would you launch slower?
I guess it's a question of like the type of the product that you're building.
For
So
sure.
we are building platform, let's call it like this, that needs to be 100% accurate. And the
Mm,
reason is that we are coming in some way to replace an existing workflow. The workflow of verifying ownership, it works today with human labor and endless of hours, but it works for all of those companies. And
mhm.
if you're trying to replace an existing workflow that works, you need to be 10 times better, and to be 10
Right.
times better than that in a super complex, data complex environment, it's a challenge. So that's the reason like I will do that. Like if I will compare myself to a different SaaS company that is providing you a visualization to certain data points, they are creating for you like something new that you don't have and then launch fast like without you they're in like ground zero, and with you they will get up, maybe not into like the maximum, but they will get some value. If you're trying to build something that is coming to replace an existing workflow, you cannot be a percentage less than 100% accurate and others.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's, I
that
think, a differentiator.
that makes a lot of sense. And I guess it's so important as well that you can't afford to make a single mistake, right? Like the move fast and break things mentality probably doesn't work here.
Yeah, that's the challenge. You need to build a huge platform in some way, very strong capabilities before you can actually launch your product in full capacity in the market. There's like many ways to hack and so on. Of course, we're doing it, but in short, yeah, you're right.
Okay. Okay. And then are there any big initiatives that Dono have this year? Are you rolling out any exciting new features or is something on the horizon that you could share?
Many. First of all, we are in the beginning of this year, we were operating in one state, in Florida only. We're now, by the end of this quarter, we're going to launch another 10 states. We're becoming kind of like the strongest data provider in the states. Like there is some data providers here that are working for like decades, and we're going like to pass them like rapidly this like quarter, and by the end of the year, hopefully will cover like most of like the US. And also from like our underwriting capabilities, they're becoming much stronger with the ability to answer much more complicated queries in some way on the data that we know how to.
Okay. Like excited for that. And so you're about to like leapfrog competitors, it sounds like.
Yes, let's call it like this.
Okay, nice. That's always good news. Cool.
Yeah. Fighting hard. Yeah, it's not an easy fight, but yeah.
Good on you. Cool, Tali. So then, I guess finally, a question that I really like to ask because the answers that I get are always very different. Is let's say that you had a magic wand that you could wave over one big problem with Dono or maybe in the industry right now, and you could solve it just like that. What would that big problem be right now?
Wow, it's a great question. I think rushing sales cycles is one of the frustrating things, but working with like huge enterprises, like multi-hundred, like very big organization that those are a client is really slowliness of sales cycles. Let's think about it in this way, like a few months for every like process. If we will have a magic wand, they will have a way, find a way to rush those processes. But that's kind of like what you get. You pay what you get in some way. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, look, I really appreciate the time and the insights. I think what you guys are doing sounds really innovative and exciting. Bringing AI to such an old, prehistoric sort of way of doing things, I think, is always a great thing. Yeah. If people are listening and they want to check you guys out, and maybe they want to get a demo or something like that, where can they go? How can they connect?
So first of all, to our website, it's dono.ai. They can reach me on LinkedIn, on my email. So it's tali@dono.ai. Always love to chat.
Perfect. I'll make sure to leave links in the description. Highly suggest anybody who's listening and this sounds interesting to them to go check it out. But thank you very much, Tali, for the time and the insights, like I say. And thank you guys for watching. We will see you in the next episode.
Okay, Jordan, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.